So you can expect countries like China and India and developing countries in Southeast Asia, in Africa, as they develop and wealth becomes greater, for them to do similar things. It might not look exactly the same, but there will be similarities because the populations will demand that.
How can gas and LNG not just become the bridge? I keep hearing this phrase now, be the destination fuel. How can gas and LNG replace coal? And I'm being told that it is, that these countries, that gas and LNG cannot compete with coal because coal is dirty and dirty always wins on a short-term cost basis. On a long-term cost basis, the total environmental cost and lifestyle cost is higher, but in a short-term basis. So is there anything, is there a creative idea, is there innovation, is there ingenuity out there where natural gas and LNG can actually go out and compete against coal? And it's no longer that these countries have to choose natural gas because...
Yeah, it's an interesting question because there's many dimensions to it. The first thing we have to put on the table, and this has generally been true historically for developed countries as they develop, right? As they develop, they tend to use what they have first.
Yeah.
And this is really just a notion of access at low cost, which gives you reliability and security of supply. The US, that's exactly what the US did. It used what it had first. The UK, it's exactly what the UK did, used what it had first. So, I mean, this is not a new idea, right? It's something that's been around for a while. And as economies develop, so if we get into the Indias and Chinas and the countries in the ASEAN region,
Yes.
countries in sub-Saharan Africa, they're going to use what they have first.
Yes.
And then as they grow, they're going to start to look to other sources of fuels to meet emerging demands in different sectors that maybe aren't that, can't be facilitated in the same way with a coal resource or whatever it happens to be. So you have to recognize that first. It's about the principle of comparative advantage driving economic growth. It's sort of at the core of development literature, really, in everything we've ever observed in this space. But, and here's the big kind of thing to think about when we think about how these countries might evolve.
Yeah.
Usually what happens as countries get wealthier, environmental motives they begin to move up the pecking order. So it's not that they didn't care about the environment when they were lower income. It's just that other things mattered a little bit more in terms of marginal benefit, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So having a roof over your head, food on your plate, clothes on your back, that trumps everything, right? And then once you have that and it becomes a foregone conclusion, then you start to look to other things because, an extra Big Mac doesn't really provide a whole lot of additional benefit, but clean water, clean air,
quality of life becomes important.
Exactly. And so you see, as countries get wealthier, that begins to take precedent. And so you see a migration in the public policy realm and the regulatory realm towards institutions that can help advance those types of things. Like, think about the 60s and the development of the EPA and it coming into its own in the United States, right? I mean, that's an outgrowth of exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So you can expect countries like China and India and developing countries in Southeast Asia, in Africa, as they develop and wealth becomes greater, for them to do similar things. It might not look exactly the same, but there will be similarities because the populations will demand that. And so what that means is as these countries develop, the demand for cleaner fuels is going to grow. And that's what's really interesting about the future of like LNG and the future of natural gas more generally, is it is a cleaner fuel relative to the incumbents in a lot of these places. So when you talk about countries that you still see a lot of use of biomass and waste to generate heat for either cooking within the home or
Yes.
boiling water or whatever.
Yes.
As soon as you have centralized forms of energy, it could be electricity generated by coal. They'll start moving to that because it's actually cleaner, right?
Yes.
And then at some point they start to see, well, wow, the air quality could be a lot better. So maybe we need to use the scrubbers that are installed on these coal facilities, and it'll eliminate SOx and NOx. And then they say, all right, well, we've got to do something about carbon footprints and other issues, particulates. Maybe there's a waste disposal issue related to coal ash concerns, whatever it might be, right? And then you'll start to see investments being made in the fuels that don't have those issues. And so one of the things that generates the difference of perspectives that I was referencing is in the developed world, we've already gone through that evolution.
Yes.
Right? We're already to a place where we're displacing coal with gas. We're trying to phase it out, coal out, actually.
Yes.
And that's a remarkable thing to see happening in a place like the US that has 27% of the world's recoverable coal.
Yes.
Right. To see it being phased out, even though it's that abundant,
yes,
is a remarkable testament to environmental, environmental objectives and environmental preference. So natural gas is a big driver of coal being phased out in the US. So if you just want to think about how things are going to evolve in other places around the world, you can kind of look historically at what has happened and what is happening in the developed world, and you can kind of see traces of what you might see. Now, every country's a little different, right? Some countries don't have coal, so they use oil. Some countries, don't have oil, but they use coal. I mean, it just depends on the country and its resource endowment. But make no mistake, the country's going to lean on the resources it has first, and then it's going to look to sate other demands like environmental demands as it develops and becomes wealthier. And